You're listening to the Valley Current.
And I'll tell you something, a lot of people are still wondering whether those cities are going to be places that more and more people move out of. Whereas historically, these have been places people move to get the better job. But if the better job doesn't require you to go to an office,
that's true.
This is what ties to this topic of what transformation are we in? And I sent you that article that a lot of people for Facebook are not going back to the East Palo Alto office of Facebook.
Right.
They're like saying I can work anywhere from home or from WeWork or from someplace else in another state, in another time zone, in a different manner of work.
Well, then even on top of that, let's face it, then add top of that on top of the gas prices now, right? Why would someone want to get in their car and drive back and forth to work?
No, I tell you, Joe, this is a funny footnote to that story. So I don't have a car anymore in California. So my cars are all, I don't even have a car in California, so I have to rent. So I, of course, have historically rented whenever I travel for cases, Minnesota, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. Yeah. And so I have like executive blah, blah, blah status with Hertz, with Avis, with all these car companies. And what I'm noticing is that how you're treated really makes a difference if you repeatedly rent. And what I'm also noticing is they're differentiating now around, and Hertz in particular is because they've been through bankruptcy. Hertz offers a Tesla as a choice. So think about it for a second. If you have a Tesla, and of course the rates in California are pretty high, like a standard car in California for a 3-day rental, standard car is like 110 a day.
Yeah, right.
Seems really high to me, but that's what it is. A Tesla is 130 a day. The gas price per day is probably $20 a day. Yeah. There's no gas in the Tesla. And you don't have to worry about filling it up and getting like the super surcharge.
Right.
So of course it became easy to say, all of my future rentals now will be Teslas. Yeah. So of course, I get these emails from Avis saying, hey, you haven't rented from us for a while. What's going on? Because I traditionally been an Avis fan, but Avis doesn't have Teslas and doesn't have an electrified fleet yet. But presumably they will. I mean, that's the future, right? Particularly if these cars hold up. Right. If these Teslas hold up to, no oil changes, no maintenance, no service, no tune-ups, right? And so to some degree, Tesla's got a huge market in the rental car business because I don't think anyone likes filling up the tank before you get to the airport, right?
I got a system with rent-a-cars. I mean, I travel enough where I go in and book them and then I check them 2 or 3 times a week and they'll never tell you. It's like a capacity thing. I learned this with the airlines.
Right.
You just keep going in and checking your reservation and you could oftentimes keep lowering your rate. Like I'm going down to Palm Desert. I'm flying to the Palm Springs, staying there for 4 days and then driving to San Diego. So I just, instead of doing Uber every day back and forth, I was looking for rent-a-cars. When I started looking, it was like, $80, $90 a day. And now I ended up eventually looking. I've got it now where it's at about $35, $40 a day.
Wow. How'd you do that? You have an app?
You got to keep going on to the site. Unfortunately, there's no app for it. You got to keep going onto the site. And just like, I don't know if you do this with Southwest, but like you book a ticket with Southwest, let's say you pay $100.
Right.
Every once in a while, you just go on and you say change. And it comes up, what do you want to change? You just hit change, keep the same day. All the fares come up, and oftentimes it'll say plus 20, plus 4, minus. And if it's minus on the same flight, you hit it, it gives you a credit. It just adds it to your credit.
Wow. So you're just saying that they have not figured out that people are gaming that part of it. And in many ways, you can save money just by spending a few minutes. I think most people don't even realize that that's the case, right?
Most people book, I've told this there. So try it again. Next time you rent a car, just try it. I know it's a little of a pain, but if you go back into the reservation or search again a couple times a week, you'd be surprised how they change from time to time.
Well, all I want is something that takes my, I'll call it elite status, because what I like is when you get to the airport, the car is there and you don't stop at the counter, you just go through. Right. So I want something that takes, let's say, the three brands that I have that elite status with, Hertz, Avis, and whatever budget, whatever the three are. I want something that just rotates between the three and says the best deal for the car you want is here, and just get you that deal and allows you to move on as opposed to spending the time. But we went off to this direction because I think in general the concern that people have, even when they rent a car and you don't get all the insurance, is you park the car and then someone breaks into the car.
Right.
And you're like, that I'm supposed to have insurance for that? And they tell you, yeah, you're supposed to have insurance for that. And so you have to pay for the $300 window that they broke. Mm-hmm. And you're like, really? And they're like, yeah, you should have parked it in a locked garage. And then you start saying to yourself, is it even worth renting a car? Maybe you're better off with the inconvenience of Uber and just accepting the wait, because the hassle factor of now dealing with the broken window and seeing if your insurance will cover it and so on. And it's, it's stuff that makes travel sort of far less convenient, which then gets us to this point of maybe we're heading into a world where there really is this idea of a metaverse.
Yeah,
where you are literally in the conference room in a three-dimensional kind of way, not flat two-dimensional Zoom, but three-dimensional kind of way. And you get the work done. You get the intellectual work done. Now, I don't know. I mean, you and I are of the same view, which is having a meeting in person is really valuable. Yeah. And this Zoom stuff is sort of a weak replacement, but we did it as a way to not spread the virus. And if the virus really is on the downtrend, which of course the news is confused about, but it looks like from a Meta, which is now Facebook, but they call it, the parent company is called Meta. They want to believe that this metaverse stuff is real, and their executives appear to be saying it is real, and that they're going to go with the view that they don't have to report to work. I mean,
I'll tell you what's
crazy to me, right?
I'll tell you what's interesting. It's probably not, but I give them credit. They were the leader in this. So EXP is a publicly traded company, and they're the first ever virtual real estate company. So they don't pay for any office space. If you want to get an office, that's up to you, but they won't pay for any office space. So they all along have implemented this incredible technology. So like right now they've added me. So they've already did a demonstration with me. They show me walking around, meeting people and sitting down at a desk and stuff.
Oh, really? Oh, so yeah. You've been turned into an avatar in the metaverse. Yeah.
That's right.
Let's do this for a second just to see. I pulled up a video that says this is what the metaverse is all about. Let's just play this for a second. I've not played it before, and let's see if it does a good job. And you compare it, right?
The metaverse is an evolving network of three-dimensional online spaces where people move, interact, and socialize in real time while engaging in entertainment, business, and leisure. For example, you can enjoy front row seats at concerts and other events, host business meetings, or play a wide variety of games. Importantly, the metaverse both involves and goes beyond our physical world, and VR headsets help to immerse users far more than traditional screens. At present, the most popular way of entering the metaverse is through Meta's Oculus. However, other tech companies such as Apple and Microsoft are developing their own hardware, as are game developers like Valve. For perspectives on this topic, click the links provided.
Yeah, so that's a good short 1 minute summary of where this stuff is going. Right. And you're saying you have been turned into an avatar. There's a Joe Kuchera online. Now we have to decide. Joe Kuchera, like 50 years from now, is still online, and Joe Kuchera, human form, is no longer with us. Maybe you're lucky, and maybe I am, and we live to 120. So we say, no, we're still alive. And the royalties are coming in from this activity, but who owns, like, there's an issue of who owns that character, because that's really you.
Good point.
They've created a comic book-like version of you. You're not Superman, but you might as well be in the real estate case. And they're giving you a way to amplify yourself in a virtual way that doesn't require you to spend the human time, because they can program that in a way that provides answers, I assume, to standard frequently asked questions, right?
Right. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Yeah. I this whole world of business, I don't know where it's going, but isn't it interesting that it took a major virus pandemic to get the shift moving?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. That's said all the time. Necessity was, you can't travel, you can't be on a plane, you can't be on a train, can't be in an office, can't do this, can't do that. And humans are great at adaptation. That's why we've survived. Now, a lot of people say, well, we're not really great at adaptation because look at what we've done to the planet, and we're still doing it. And Ukraine is getting, bombed as we speak. And yet, that's human evolution. We're not exactly adapting towards a more peaceful culture. Yeah. So a lot of people think that maybe what's really happening is all the rich people, and that includes us, upper middle class people, are moving towards a rich new world that most of the world is being left out of. And Russia is going to be totally left out of it. So the concept of it is almost like there's cave people, and then there's evolved 21st century people. And the cave people are eventually going to essentially die off because they won't have access to modern medicine. They won't have access to information. They won't be evolving. Right. And the smarter people will evolve. So you could say there's almost like a selection towards smarter evolution with smarter people or smarter societies. Now, there's certainly a counter argument that a lot of smart people exist in Russia. Putin is one of them, just a little deranged if you look at what he's doing. But he's classically been viewed as a very smart and savvy guy. And he certainly has acquired a lot of that eastern side of Ukraine is under his control. So it hasn't been a total loss. He's got Crimea from 5-6 years ago, maybe now 8 years ago. He's got the land bridge to Crimea as a result of taking out one of those cities on the eastern side. So if you look at a map, it looks like he's gotten at least some advantages. There's no way any of those areas are going to come back to the Ukraine as I see it. They're pretty much occupied territory. So maybe it becomes like East Germany and West Germany. Ukraine gets divided into two different parts, and the East is Russian and the West is more European. That looks like, one way to imagine this ending. But I don't think he's going to accept that unless someone defeats him in some really pronounced way. I mean,
don't you think that's got to be embarrassing right now? How this has gone so far to some extent? He never admit that, but don't you think it would be embarrassing?
Right. The closest he came to admitting it was that latest speech about a week ago, where he said, all of these bourgeois people that want to have their condos in Miami and their yachts and their this and their super yachts, those people are not really Russian. Like, in so many words, he said, I want to spit those people out. He used an example of, if a fly goes in your mouth, you just spit it out. I want to spit those people out of my mouth because they're not really with us. They have essentially devolved to the Western side. Right. And my read of it is those aristocrats, those oligarchs, are putting a lot of pressure on him to say, look, you're ruining it for all of us. and you gotta take the off ramp here and just take a half a loaf. And I think his emotional reaction is, if you're against me, then I'm going to kill you. Like, you're against me, get out of the way. I mean, you're basically just as bad as the Ukrainians. Effectively, he's got a lot of resistance that's playing out. He's not getting as much support. Wow. And the Ukrainians so far, according to all the news, is they're fighting kind of a pretty aggressive land battle with like a 10-to-1 ratio of equipment and people, but they're being strategic. Like, they've got a lot of snipers that are knocking off the generals. Like, literally, the snipers are figuring out who to shoot.
I saw this morning, it's hard to believe, but that nearly 40,000 Russians have been killed so far in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you believe those numbers, what I pay attention to is the alleged captains and generals, like their leaders. Yeah. If they really are taking out the leaders, most Russians, bless their soul, they're really nice people. I've taught in Moscow. I can tell you I've met a lot of Russians. They're really normal people, but they're not leaders. They're basically followers. They're basically, you tell them what to do, they do it, they follow it. They want to be like, given the recipe for how to do it. Just like a lot of Americans are that way too. Yeah. It's common. But the leaders, the ones who can organize people, if you take them out, there's disarray. So, like, you don't have to kill 40,000 Russians. You can kill probably 400 and immobilize. You follow? Yeah. It's like if you took 400 leaders, like, I'll end with this remark, because I said to Lee, what do you think the risk is of getting hit by a nuclear ballistic missile from Russia? And she said, that probably won't happen. That's a recipe for nuclear war. But then I said, well, if it happened, where would it happen? And she said, oh, I know exactly where, Silicon Valley. And I said, why Silicon Valley? She said, Google, Apple, Facebook, go down the list of companies in Silicon Valley that would be wiped out by a nuclear warhead. And, you start to say that would probably be the beginning of the end of the tech industry. Now, we would probably recover, but it would be an immense loss of talent.
Yeah, sure would.
Immense loss of talent.
Sure would.
And if all those leaders of all of those high-tech companies are all wiped out, there would be so much disorganization for such a lengthy period of time. It's not like those are distributed businesses. Now, some of them are. That story I sent you said that Facebook is going to open up a big Kansas City facility. Yeah, right. That's like a statement that they think that they can duplicate talent in other parts of the United States.
Well, there is and I'm sure they have the data and the statistics, but there is a huge congruence. There's a huge move of youth out of California into these visiting states.
Well, right? Kansas City's got 5G all over the city. Tennessee,
Texas. There's a new wave of young people. My kids are talking about it all the time.
Well, with no taxes, probably lower real estate costs in some places. Kansas City for sure. Austin, Texas, probably just as bad.
Right.
They basically, when you look at, like, if you were a young person, this is a good hypothetical to end on. You just graduated from college. You've been a San Jose resident your entire life. You were born in San Jose, if I remember your history.
In Walnut Creek, but
right. You were born in the Bay Area.
Right.
You've been in San Jose your entire life.
Yep.
You know Silicon Valley. You've been involved in 4 or 5 different industries. You now have the latest startup, Bundle Select. It's getting traction with the partnership with EXP. There's all these good things happening. But let's say you graduate from college and you're like, the world is my oyster. What do I do? Just like me in New York, I graduated from college and it was like, well, you could take this path. You could stay in New York. You could take this path, take over your folks' business. You could take this path, go to graduate school in New York, go to law school in New York, go to business school in New York. Or you could take the more interesting, ambitious path and move to California and see what you do. Now, I'm the East Coast version of that, and I came to Silicon Valley. you're the West Coast version. What would you do knowing everything you know today? I have to say it'd probably be a more interesting question than sort of the inertia of I would just stay because all my friends and family are here. I think you might take a look back and you might say, I think there's a lot of other places that seem to be on the rise.
Yeah.
With a lot of young people who sort of aggregate together.
Yeah. I'd say so. There's no doubt if I put myself in that situation, I'm just starting out and I could do anything, go anywhere, no ties, even with family and friends, I think I would be very motivated to move out of here. Yeah.
I mean, the reason for me coming to California was I hated the New York weather. I thought, man, the weather is so crappy for most of the year. It's way too rainy and snowy and slushy for like 5-6 months out of the year. And then it's really humid as hell.
In the summertime.
Oh, it's the worst. In New York City, it's the worst. And it's dirty. I mean, it's dirty. And of course, it was crime ridden then. Now, of course, I think it's probably arguably worse, although people say it's gotten better. I don't know if that's absolutely true. But conceptually, if you're looking at a geography, weather usually plays a big role. At least for me, it did. And I was always like, hey, I want to become a surfer and get to the beach. And of course, these images, these fantasies that exist, they really are fantasies until you make them a reality. And then the reality can be far different than the fantasy, and you find that out. But, generally speaking, I do think the young folks are much more open to, hey, Dad, thanks for being a great dad, but I'm going to Tennessee, or I'm going somewhere else where I could find the right job that actually pays a decent amount compared to what the cost of living is.
Right.
Because I don't really want to just have a couch that I share with, 5 other people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crazy, nutty stuff that happens these days. Right.
That is that. Absolutely.
So the metaverse may well be an instigator and an accelerant of that kind of thinking. Because then people are like, and I'm working for Facebook and I get paid California standard wages, but it goes twice as far in Kansas City, or it goes 3 times as far in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And, I can jump on a Southwest flight and see you on a weekend if you want to see stuff in person.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.